So the 15-page preliminary report on the AI-171 crash in Ahmedabad tells you what happened. But does it tell you why it happened, Shravan?
If you're wondering who's responsible for it, this report does not answer that question. Is the manufacturer responsible? Is the airline responsible? Is the engine manufacturer responsible? None of it has been answered. Now, what is the typical response, Niranjan? The typical response is this, that this is a preliminary report mandated to be submitted within 30 days of a crash, which means that they do not have enough time to come to any sort of conclusion. But surprisingly, there is one element mentioned at the last page.
Yeah, I have that mentioned here and I'm going to read out from it. The second last point on page number 15 in the conclusion, I'm going to read that out. It says at this stage of the investigation, there are no recommended actions to be 7878, that is Boeing, 787 Dreamliner and GE/GE NX-1B engine operators and manufacturers. So no recommendation for either Boeing or no recommendations for the engine makers. Now, why is this critical? This report, while saying that there are no recommendations, Shravan, also makes a very interesting mention that in 2018, the FAA issued a special advisory bulletin in December 2018 regarding potential disengagement of fuel control switch locking feature. Now, that is mentioned in this report. It says the SAIB, which is Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, was issued based on reports from operators of Model 737 airplanes that fuel control switches were installed with the locking feature disengaged. The airworthiness concern was not considered an unsafe condition that would warrant airworthiness directive by the FAA. Interestingly, when it came to Air India, Shravan, as per the information from Air India, the suggested inspections were not carried out. I repeat, as per information from Air India, suggested inspections were not carried out as SAIB was advisory and not mandatory. But when an advisory like this comes in, and there is also a report from GE which asks for manufacturers or airlines to make specific changes, they gave out a notice asking for a solder change to be made so that there is no lack of thrust control, correct? So who acts when such a notice is given? Does Boeing have to act? Does Air India have to act?
Well, it is also incumbent on the airline. Now, what exactly is the SAIB recommendation that has been made? Now, this mention was made in the report, and we've now got the full details of what was the recommendation, and I'm quoting from it. They said that inspect the locking feature of the fuel control switch to ensure its engagement. Who is saying this? FAA has recommended that all owners, operators of the affected airplanes incorporate the following actions at the earliest, of which they've asked, inspect the locking feature of the fuel control switch. Now, if you go by this particular report says that as per the information from Air India, the suggested inspections were not carried out.
Not carried out.
It is the report. We are not saying this, it's the report. And what was the SAIB advisory? We've also read that out. SAIB is saying that you have to inspect the fuel switch lock system. So because right now, the biggest debate is over the fuel switch system and whether at all this was manually pushed over from run to cut off, which means that the engine does not get enough fuel for the thrust.
Yeah. Boeing had the fuel control completely manually operated, which means you had to manually put it on run or on a cutoff position. In this case, the pilots are clearly heard saying they didn't do it. They couldn't have done it. So who did it? That's the question. And that's where my final question to you, Shravan, is it right to say at this stage that there is no clean sheet to Boeing? There is no clean sheet to Air India yet?
There's no clean sheet. There is absolutely no clean sheet. The reason why? Because it is their own admission that there is much more data that needs to be analyzed. Only partial data has been analyzed, so much so the cockpit recorded conversation is also limited to just about a few seconds. That is immediately after takeoff when the conversation happened between pilot 1 and pilot 2. And thereafter, within few seconds, the crash takes place. So we still do not know why the engines were not working. Why was it from run to cut off and then cut off to run? We still do not have any answers to that. And that is the reason why they say that only after the entire data is analyzed, it is scrutinized, only then they come to any sort of a complete report, which may take a few more months.
Finally, Three aspects are clear in this report: that the fuel switch went from run to cutoff. There was an RAT which was activated immediately after takeoff. There was a loss of thrust. It was in idle. That's what the report says. Was it a manufacturing defect? Was it technical failure? Or was it sabotage? Or was it human error? That we will have to wait for much longer. Thanks for watching.